Welcome back, baseball fans, to another elimination video. Today we are eliminating the Houston Astros, who, oh boy, they were sitting at a 5 seed looking at the playoffs. They didn't have a tournament at all that was any good. They had a chance to win this division. They fell to the Giants, losing 5 of 7. After a reprieve against a bad Colorado team, then they finished up by dropping 3 straight to the Pirates, finishing 20-19. Missing the playoffs altogether. Disappointing finish for an Astro team that went to the playoffs a year ago. But really not... They're kind of in that in-between land. They get to the playoffs or just miss out, but they're not really going to do a lot of damage if they get there. They're not going to get high draft picks. They're in that, that uncomfortable area where you're not in the draft lottery and you're not going to the World Series. Anyway, Cesar Cedeno is still the shining star of this team. Was the All-Star again. 305, 9 homer, 25 RBI, 14 stolen bases. There's walk, K, on base, does everything for this club. Rangy 1, minus 3 arm in center field. You can't ask for more. Bob Watson's card was down slightly. He's a 300 hitter. He didn't make it. Metzger, solid. Great glove at shortstop. Jose Cruz will have better years moving forward. Then after that, you see a huge slump for a bunch of guys here. Edwards is no big deal. Cater's a 300 hitter at 219. Jim Wynn, 270, 280 hitter with a ton of power and walks, but a 219 batting average. And then the Mendoza kids. Doug Rader, I could stomach. He's a 237 hitter. But there, you see it, folks. You see what has to happen. You see the crystal ball. Joe Morgan's final year in Houston. Puts up a 193 season, 2 homers, just 7 RBIs with 15 stolen bases. And so now you have the plausible drama why he could be traded to Cincinnati, which he will be. But at least in this particular case, it's a claim that maybe he could not be worth that much, you would think, to the Astros at least. We'll make a nice fair trade for both teams. Pitching, Larry Dierker just shows up every year, gives a nice performance. 104 innings, 267 ERA, and a 121 whip. Better than his card, typical. Jim Ray, solid in the bullpen. Bob Johnson, solid starter. Lindsey was the closer as a free agent, did a nice job. But the other pitchers, Ken Forsch and Gary Peters, were a problem. Gary Peters, just because he threw left-handed, they had to have a lefty starter. There were not a lot of them in free agency, and he was not very good. But Ken Forsch is a talented pitcher. Waiting for his... he was a relief starter, waiting finally for a chance to get into the rotation. When he broke in with his big chance, didn't do a lot with it. 2-6, 448, so he has room for improvement. Let's take a look now at the Astro card set here. We're going to pull their 71 guys out, see who will be back next year. This is one of the most important off seasons moving forward, because the idea of what we do with Morgan and so forth has to be addressed in a fair way to make the whole league happy, not just the Cincinnati Reds. If you get the idea. So these are the 8. You're looking for a 7-5 split if you can get it for balance. And oh boy, they have no balance. And this is probably why they're going to make some deals. Houston's keeping, are you ready for this? 10 hitters and only 2 pitchers. That is a staggering imbalance. They have to get 3/4 of a pitching staff in this offseason. Oh my goodness. So, depending on that drastic need for pitching, if they don't find it, we could see one of those 100-loss Astro teams from the early mid-70s. So, yeah, this is what could be happening right now. We could have a era where the Astros suffer until they get better later in the decade. And that, if you're like Cesar Cedeno, you don't want to hear that crap. Let's see these 10 hitters. Well, you got a catching platoon of Edwards and Billings. It's okay. You can have Bob Watson play first base or DH. You don't have a second baseman presently, but Dennis Menke could play there, so you don't have to import one. You just want to go with this guy. You have Doug Rader that can play third. You should have everything covered. You have 10 guys here, right? Metzger's at short. Here is a first base DH. You can put him at first, where Watson was. Make Watson the DH now. And your outfield is covered. Well, you've got Wynn and Cedeno. And you really have Cater, who you don't need. He'd be a nice trade chip. Somebody wants him. Nice little 313 hitter who can play the corners. It looks like Jose Cruz and Morgan are the two missing players, obviously. And this is your pitching staff. Yeah, that pretty much is it. Larry Dierker's, that's all you really need. We love Larry Dierker, and boy, he's really going to have a big task next year of keeping his Astros competitive, pitching-wise. And you have Mike Cosgrove, a long man who at least is left-handed, so that's nice that you only have to search for two. That's not a needle in a haystack. Look, an off-season where you need 3 lefties is almost a death sentence, but just needing 2 isn't too bad. Dierker and Cosgrove. Well, this is going to be fun. I've never had this of an imbalance before. So we're going to take a look at those 8 Houston players and try and predict what's going to happen in their off-season. Who they keep, who they waive, who they retire, and obviously who they trade. All right, let's take a look at these Astros, what they're going to do. The first player, well, we talked about needing tons of pitching, but you got to address Jose Cruz. He's coming back. He's going to have to be one of your keepers. You got him when he wasn't even on your team yet. You see, he has technically 3 more years with the Cardinals, but the Astros said we don't care, and the Cardinals were like, well, indifferent to the whole thing. Plus, the Cardinals took Reggie Smith with his Boston stats, so it was not a big deal. He'll obviously stay in Houston. No reason to kick him to the curb. We've got these 4 years coming up. He's an 801 OPS. You know, in a curious move, you could get waivers on Jose Cruz as a corner outfielder who, look at these numbers carefully, they're not spectacular at all. They don't get really spectacular until 76 and beyond. Okay? So next year, you could take a chance, put him on waivers, see who gets him, see who wants to make a claim on him. If nobody does, you can re-sign him off of waivers. It's a risk, but this is a strange off-season for Houston because they're going to lose a ton of pitching here. So we're going to put Jose Cruz on waivers because he gets it, he qualifies for it, and his numbers aren't spectacular as a corner outfielder. He really is just a guy here, nothing special. And feel that they can just reclaim him in the draft if he goes unclaimed. One of those handshake agreements, like, hey Jose, if nobody signs you in the draft, you can come back to Houston. All right, the next guy, Joe Morgan. Oh boy, folks. This is turning into a real bad news show for the Houston Astros here. So here, this is what's going on here. This is where the commissioner steps in and makes sure this goes smoothly. So Houston would be looking at these numbers coming up here. These eye-popping numbers, insane numbers. Going, why in the heck are we getting rid of this guy? And the commissioner's saying, well, you're going to get rid of the guy because history suggests you need to do this for the Cincinnati Reds, because I don't like to play, I want as much, in a fictional sort of strategy that I play, I like to keep the basic plot lines consistent, and I got to have Joe Morgan on the Reds. So the compensation has to be different because different players are on the roster. But the other footnote of this story is when the Reds get him, they could go right to year 4. Oh boy. And if they do that, they're getting arguably the best card of the decade. The 1975 Joe Morgan for 4 years. This is an MVP, the 974 OPS for second baseman, the 132 walks, the 327 average. He only has 17 home runs. Oh well. And you could argue, but what about the 27 home runs and the 76? But, yeah, we're going to go with 75 Morgan next year for Cincinnati, we believe. But in any event, he's classified now as a keeper with the trade option. And it's going to be how much money do they get from the Reds. Now the pitching, and there's 6 of them here. Beginning with Ken Forsch. Well, there's a keeper. So he struggled with this 71 card for whatever reason. So we can move on from it. Give him maybe something a little better. So that card with a 114 whip is pretty good. And frankly, it's not that spectacular. This is what I was saying about the Houston team. There's a little bit of a malaise until the 77, 8, 79, later in the decade when they really start challenging for this division. You got to remember, we're moving into a territory where the Reds and Dodgers dominated the National League West. He's a keeper. He does pitch. He pitches on 3 days rest in 73. Those ERAs above 4. They have to keep a pitcher. They're keeping Ken Forsch. Next guy, Gary Peters. He is a guy they signed because he's left-handed, and there was no other players available. He has 1 year left in 72, and nice long career for him with the White Sox and Red Sox. In 72, his numbers aren't very good either, and he doesn't pitch on 3 days rest anymore. But he's left-handed. That's the caveat. So if you throw left-handed, you can find a spot in this league. So the next question is, can we give waivers to Gary Peters? He has to have a Boston card. He probably will, for the 72 Sox. And there it is. Boston 72 Sox. There it is. So he gets waivers. And I think a lot of the weaker lefty pitchers will get waivers in this offseason. All right, next player, Bob Johnson, a guy who bounced around and had some success in my carryover league. There's a bunch of them. We want, oh boy, I think we want this one. Nope. Oops, we want the next one. And now we get stuck into this search engine. How about this one? There he is. That's the one we want. The pitcher. Not the hitter. So here's his line. 71 Pirates. Before that, Kansas City. Before that, the Mets. Then Cleveland. Then Atlanta. 72. He is just as good as 71 with the Pirates, but the Astros will hang on to him. He never was associated with the Astros, but they need pitching, so you might as well keep him or offer him in a trade. For now, let's keep him because you need pitching. We'll put trade as a possibility since he never really did play for the Astros. All right, 3 more pitchers to go. Denny LeMaster, who has had a decline here from 69 on. Denny LeMaster, he might be done here. Started out with Milwaukee Braves, Atlanta Braves, All-Star in 67. Nice card here in 69. We used this card for the Astros. It was very good. And then the 71 card, he's a reliever. And then in 72, we got to put him on retirement. I doubt they make a card for the Expos in 72. We'll take a peek though to see if LeMaster exists on the 72 Expos as a lefty, which it's funny because the Expos were notoriously short left-handed pitching. They didn't have a lot of it. They had Baylor Moore and like nobody else. Denny LeMaster has to retire. His career's over. Next guy, Jim Ray. He should be a quality reliever. He had a nice little run here. From 65 to 74. Nice little relief pitcher for the Astros. And in 1 year in Detroit. But he had some nice years in 70 and 71. After that, he is just a guy. A righty reliever with an ERA over 4. is not really worth keeping because you can find this guy in the draft or a guy like it. Let's put waivers on him. Let's make sure he has a 72 card though for waivers. He has to have a 72 Astro card. So we'll go over and look for that. Should. Jim Ray. There it is. He gets waivers. And lastly, Frank Lindsay. Lindsay was a Cardinal. Somehow missed a year, I think, or was out of my league for 1 year because he was poor. He was good, bad, good, back and forth, I think. There it is. Oh no, 63. Yeah, so 70 wasn't that good. 69 was okay. 70 was bad. 71 was good. And so he was out of the league for that 1 year, got back into it last year with this Cardinal card. Now we're up to 72, 3 and 4, and he's okay. He's nice. He's not the property of the Astros. We can just keep him. We don't have to put him on waivers. He's a decent pitcher. He's got an ERA, a run better than Jim Ray. And we need a fourth keeper. You always want to keep if you can. So let's keep Frank Lindsay. And with that, that's 3 pitchers to add to Durker, Cosgrove. So that's 5. And then you have to find 3 more guys in the rookie class or free agency. Plus you have to trade Joe Morgan. This is going to be a very complicated mess for the Astros to get all these accomplished. Not to mention they waived a left-handed starting pitcher and retired another left-handed pitcher, and lefties are hard to find. So boy, it's a tall task. It's almost like, do the Cincinnati Reds have a lefty they want to get rid of? Not Don Gullett. How about Ross Grimsley? Can we get Ross Grimsley off the Reds and send him to Houston? They could really use him. That'd be nice. You know what I mean? You have to be creative. You can't do the same deal that went down. Plus, you know the results, and so you don't want to recreate if it's a bad deal. You want to kind of make it different to suit your needs. A lefty starter should be pound the table, Houston, and say, I got to have a lefty starter. You don't get Joe Morgan. So it's either Don Gullett or Ross Grimsley or Fred Norman, who you don't have presently. Fred Norman's on a different team, but go get Fred Norman and then trade him to us. And thinking about the Astro team, I don't recall a lefty in the decade as a starter of quality. Anyway, I know Negro, I know J.R. Richard, Sambito's in the bullpen, Dave Smith's in the bullpen. Cosgrove's a reliever only. So it'd be nice if Houston could land a solid left-handed starting pitcher to join a rotation of Larry Durker, Ken Forsch, and Bob Johnson. If you could do that, then losing Joe Morgan won't be as painful. Because again, you are bringing 10 hitters back. And remember, Joe Morgan just hit 193 for you. So you're only losing a 193 hitter in essence. And you can improve Gary Peters with a great starting pitcher. So that's the early consideration here. A long time till that trade has to be made. It could be one of those hot stove trades that I do in December or January. So anyway, yeah, that's it tonight for eliminating the Houston Astros. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.